Hurry up, isn't it ready yet? I'm terribly sorry, please, wait just a little longer. Voices demanding meals could be heard from the surrounding rooms. Indeed, it was already past 7 in the evening. What on earth was going on? Then, the female hotel manager came to our private room as well and offered her apologies. Apparently, all the chefs had suddenly been poached by a major hotel, leaving only one apprentice chef to prepare the meals. It was impossible for a single apprentice chef to prepare a large amount of food. Then, my wife put her hand on my shoulder and gave me a signal. I stood up and headed to the kitchen. Little did I know at that moment, this decision would change the course of my life. My name is John Miller, 31 years old. I was just an ordinary guy, born to a chef father and a homemaker mother. My father worked as a chef in a high-end restaurant and would often teach me how to cook on his days off. Those cooking sessions with my busy father were precious moments for me. Even when I was still young, he let me handle a large knife and taught me how to slice beef. While my mother watched in surprise, she quietly observed us. My parents were supportive, letting me try anything I wanted without any objections. Eventually, my dream became to be a chef like my father. Knowing my dream, my father was as happy as if it were his own, teaching me various dishes almost every day. Watching us, my mother would always smile gently. And John, you can become a wonderful chef, was always my mother's favorite thing to say. I loved my parents dearly. But the happiness didn't last. Suddenly, my high school received a call. My teacher urgently told me to go home. Wondering what had happened, I rushed home. I found my father in tears inside the house, and my mother was lying on the bed. My mother was already cold to the touch. It seemed to be a sudden heart attack. I called my mother's name over and over, but there was no response. After that day, my father threw himself even more into his work, and we talked less and less. I think he was also feeling the loneliness of my mother's sudden absence. And I began to feel like my own life didn't matter anymore. No matter how tough the days were, my father was not around because of work. My heart was broken by the loneliness of not having my mother around. After graduating high school, I didn't go to culinary school to become a chef but started working instead. Thanks to a recommendation from my high school, I landed a job at an international 5-star hotel. Getting such a wonderful job right out of high school was almost like a miracle. However, when I informed my father about my job offer, he just nodded sadly. He must have felt lonely at the thought of his only family member moving out. I left home when I got the job. It was too painful to continue living in a house filled with memories of my mother. When I was leaving, my father gave me a knife with my name engraved on it. I had planned to give this to you when you moved out. Make sure to cook for yourself and take care of your health, even when you're living alone. Thank you. I took the knife my father gave me and left home. With a heavy heart and complex feelings, I headed to my new place, carrying my substantial luggage. Working at the International 5-star hotel was exciting and enjoyable. It was fulfilling, and I even aspired to make a name for myself there. And then, one day, after such days had continued for 10 years, I received a call from my father. I'm going to have surgery, so I need you to sign a consent form. I turned pale. My father, having surgery. What was going on? I rushed to the hospital. In the hospital room bed, my father was lying down. Seeing my father for the first time in a while, I found he had aged considerably and looked like an elderly man. Although my father's surgery wasn't life-threatening, I decided then that I wanted to work close to him. So, I quit my hotel job of 10 years. My father looked at me with regret, but it couldn't be helped. I decided to switch jobs to a major hotel nearby. I was hired as a full-time janitor at the major hotel. I was relieved to have found re-employment. However, the job was harder than I had imagined. I was responsible for ensuring that the guests didn't experience any discomfort, meticulously cleaning the entrance, guest rooms, and more. I sweep carefully with a broom, then go over it with a vacuum cleaner. After that, I polish the floor meticulously with a cloth. I had never cleaned my own house this thoroughly. It was then that I truly understood how demanding it is to earn money. It was Ashley, a fellow new employee, who spoke to me at that time. "Are you a new employee too? Cleaning is tough, isn't it?" Ashley had her long hair tied back and her large eyes sparkled. "I'm a new employee as well. Yeah, we have to clean even the smallest details." As Ashley and I complained, we continued our cleaning. Then, a loud voice echoed across the floor. "Hey, you two, cut the chatter. John, your cleaning is too sloppy." "Yes, I'm sorry." It was Mason, the person in charge of training new employees. Mason was a man about a decade older than me. He had taken a particular dislike to me, claiming I was the worst performer among the new employees. "Do you even have any motivation? I'll straighten out your attitude." From then on, Mason's treatment of me worsened. He would deliberately mess up the rooms I had cleaned or make me clean the same area over and over again. "Hey, incompetent, redo this area." "But I just cleaned it a moment ago." "What? Talking back to me?" Mason always approached me with a domineering attitude. But as a new employee, I couldn't muster a response. Days like these continued, and I was exhausted both mentally and physically, but there was a silver lining. It was that Ashley and I started dating. As fellow newcomers, we naturally had a lot to talk about. Our tastes in food and TV programs were identical, so it was only natural that we ended up together. After we started dating, I became more positive about things. I think it's because Ashley's positivity contagiously affected me in a good way. And after a while, Ashley and I decided to get married. Turns out, Ashley was pregnant with my child. Ashley couldn't continue working due to her condition, so she decided to quit her job. She didn't want to leave her job, as she was proud of her work and enjoyed it, but it couldn't be helped. In response, I decided to work even harder. Mason gave a puzzled look when he heard Ashley was quitting. And then, glaring at me, he said, "Ashley is good at her job. If anyone should quit, it should be you." But there was nothing I could do. Ashley was suffering from severe morning sickness. It was so bad that she couldn't even eat. Worried, I looked up food she could possibly eat and decided to cook for her. Ashley loves vegetables. I thought I'd make a dish that highlighted the flavors of the vegetables to make it easier for her to eat. As I was thinking about this, I busied myself with cooking. Before I knew it, the meal was ready and placed on the table. Ashley's eyes lit up. "John, that's amazing. You're even more skilled than I am. I'm impressed." She started eating right away. She ate it as if it was delicious. Despite saying she couldn't eat because of the morning sickness, she finished everything quickly, which made me happy. Then, with a curious look, Ashley asked me, "How come you're so good at cooking, John? You're way better than me." I realized I hadn't told Ashley about this and decided to share. I took a deep breath. "You know, I once dreamed of becoming a chef. Remember my dad is a chef, right? I used to learn a lot about cooking from him when I was little." Hearing this, Ashley nodded. She seemed satisfied with my explanation for being good at cooking. From then on, I took over the cooking duties for the unwell Ashley. Ashley always said the meals I made were delicious. So, cooking became a way for me to relax. And there was good news at work too. Mason, who had been treating me poorly and saying I was incompetent, was transferred to a different luxury hotel. Since Mason had always looked down on me and said awful things, his absence significantly reduced my stress levels. Since Mason was transferred and no longer around, I was able to work more freely at the workplace. And then 6 months passed. I was at the hospital where Ashley was admitted. Today, I was finally going to become a father. Ashley was in the delivery room, and I was anxiously waiting for our baby's birth. I hoped for the health of both mother and child. That's what I prayed for as I waited. Then the moment came. I could hear the cries of a baby from the delivery room. And the midwife came to me, holding the baby. "It's a girl. Congratulations." I received the baby from the midwife and held her in my arms. The tiny, soft baby was wide-eyed, looking around. I felt she resembled me in some way. "So, I'm a father now. Hello there, I'm your daddy." I spoke to the baby. She stared back at me intently. So adorable. While I was admiring the baby, a familiar voice reached my ears. "John, congratulations." It was my dad's voice. I turned around immediately. And there he was, standing. "Dad, what are you doing here?" Ashley told me. When Ashley and I decided to get married, I had only informed my dad about the marriage, but he hadn't met Ashley yet. That was because he was busy with work, and we didn't have the chance to meet up. I didn't want to interrupt my dad's work. However, Ashley had secretly informed my dad about the birth without telling me. I was touched by Ashley's thoughtfulness. My father looked lovingly at the baby, his grandchild, squinting his eyes. "She's adorable. She looks just like you when you were a baby. May I hold her?" I handed my daughter to my father. Tears streamed down his face as he held her. I was happy to see this. After a while, Ashley came out of the delivery room in a wheelchair. Seeing my father and me together, she smiled. I rushed to Ashley's side. I had something important to tell her. "Ashley, thank you for our beautiful baby, and for letting my father know." I looked into Ashley's eyes and expressed my heartfelt gratitude. Tears naturally rolled down my cheeks. Ashley, wiping away my tears, laughed and said, "Oh, look at you, the crybaby dad." My father laughed too, standing beside us. My father named our daughter Emily. That was Ashley's earnest wish. Ashley expressed her deepest thanks to my father for naming our daughter. I decided to take 2 weeks off from my hotel job to take care of Ashley and our daughter Emily. Those 2 weeks spent with Ashley and Emily were incredibly joyful. Every day, I cooked meals for Ashley. With every meal, Ashley would eat and express how delicious it was, moved by the taste. Cooking is really enjoyable. That's what I thought. When my leave ended and I returned to work after a long absence, the hotel manager introduced me to a man. It was, unmistakably, Mason. Mason hadn't changed at all from 6 months ago. Why was Mason, who was supposed to have been transferred, here? I had a bad feeling about this. Little did I know at that moment how right my bad feeling would turn out to be. "I am Mason, the chief manager. I'm glad to be back at this hotel after a long time. I look forward to working rigorously again with all of you." I was shocked that Mason was assigned to this hotel again. Moreover, he got promoted and is now the chief manager. Well, he probably doesn't even remember me. With that thought, I returned to my station and started working. Then, Mason approached me and started saying something surprising. "Hey, incompetent. You still can't even clean properly. You're insolent for someone so incompetent." I thought the nightmare was repeating itself. I hadn't imagined that Mason would remember me and call me incompetent again. I looked down and simply said, "I'm sorry." Mason snorted with laughter and said, "A useless person is no good at anything," before walking away from me. I was seething inside, but I knew there was no point in defying Mason. It was better to keep quiet for my own sake. I sighed as I made my way home. I was completely exhausted. The next day at work, Mason was already waiting for me. "You're late. Clean every corner of this floor. We have important guests coming today." Mason seemed more on edge than usual. "A 5-star chef is coming to our hotel." My colleague whispered the information in my ear. "Really? What is a chef from a 5-star hotel coming here?" As I wondered, my colleague whispered again, "He's planning to recruit new chefs, aiming to poach a few from renowned 5-star hotels." Poaching, huh? Well, it has nothing to do with me. I followed Mason's orders and cleaned every corner of the floor with my colleagues. I intended to be careful to ensure not even a speck of dust was left on the handrails or shelves. However, Mason, looking irritated, approached me. "Can't you even do a simple cleaning job? There's still dust left. We're running out of time. Hurry up." That couldn't be. I had cleaned thoroughly just before, but irritated, I started cleaning again. Then, voices came from the hotel's entrance. Glancing over, I saw famous chefs, the kind you'd see on TV or in magazines, talking with Mason. One of the chefs glanced my way, and I instinctively looked down to avoid eye contact. Then, Mason and the chefs headed towards the hotel's kitchen. I've heard that hotels are struggling with their finances due to rising costs. Therefore, to become even slightly more popular than other hotels, differentiation from the rest is essential. Our hotel must be trying to differentiate itself through its restaurant. I thought about the hotel's management troubles as if it were someone else's problem. And again on this day, when I came home exhausted, my father was somehow at home for some reason. And Ashley was grinning. "What's going on?" Seeing the two of them like that gave me the creeps. Then Ashley leaned in and asked, "Do you know what day it is today?" My mind was filled with question marks. Today is, oh right. I hesitantly opened my mouth. Today is our wedding anniversary. I'm really sorry I forgot. Ashley laughed at my apologetic tone. It's okay, you've been busy with work. You've been so exhausted lately. It doesn't feel like an anniversary. Ashley had been paying close attention to me and was worried. Let's go to that traditional, well-established hotel restaurant you've always wanted to try. I've asked your dad to look after Emily for today. Ashley showed me the dinner tickets she had. They were from Dylan, a friend from the days when I worked at a 5-star hotel. I had always wanted to go, but we never found a time due to our busy schedules. But I wondered, could my father really take care of Emily by himself? I started to worry. Sensing my concern, my father said, "I've taken care of you when you were a baby, hadn't I? Go out and enjoy yourselves for a change," he said with a smile. Taking my father's words to heart, Ashley and I decided to go. "Thanks, Dad. We'll be off then." Ashley and I left the house hand in hand. It had been a long time since we went out just the two of us. It's been a year since we got married. Time flies. I felt truly fortunate to have married Ashley. With a deep sense of happiness, we entered the traditional hotel's restaurant. The atmosphere was different from the luxury hotel where I worked, and the building was full of charm with a well-established feel. Upon showing our dinner tickets at the reception, we were led to a beautiful private room with a view of the garden. It seemed all seating in this restaurant was private, befitting an established hotel. Ashley and I were in awe of the room's opulence. After a while, Dylan came to greet us. Dylan was still as handsome as ever. "John, it's been a while. Thanks for coming to our hotel. Make yourselves comfortable." "Thanks, we're looking forward to the meal." Dylan left with a smile. This traditional hotel was run by Dylan's parents before he took over. Its cuisine is renowned, even featured in the Michelin Guide. Dylan was always hard-working, even during his time at the five-star hotel. The hotel's popularity is undoubtedly due to Dylan's efforts. We couldn't wait to see what dishes would be served. Ashley and I couldn't wait. We were so excited. But no matter how long we waited, there was no sign of our meal arriving. I glanced at the clock. It was already past 7 in the evening. Understanding it was a busy hour, Ashley and I patiently waited. Then, we heard a familiar voice from the next private room. "This is taking forever. Are the chefs asleep in the kitchen?" This voice, it was Mason. I held my head in my hands. I didn't want to spend this wonderful time, even in a private room, next to Mason. Ashley looked at me worriedly as I held my head in my hands. Reluctantly, I explained the situation about Mason to her. Ashley then said, "Let's ignore him," and held my hand reassuringly. My heart gradually calmed down. But then, Mason's voice was heard again. "Hurry up, isn't it ready yet?" "Very sorry, it'll just be a little longer, please." Not just from Mason, but we started hearing impatient calls for food from other rooms as well. It had been over an hour since Ashley and I began waiting for our meal. What was going on? As I was pondering this, Dylan came over. All our chefs were poached by a major hotel chain. Only an apprentice is left in the kitchen. This could be the end for our traditional hotel. "John, please help us." Dylan was at a loss. Then Ashley placed her hand on my shoulder and said, "John, I think you're the only one who can help." Looking at Ashley in surprise, she met my gaze with determination. "I know everything, John. It's your time to shine." So, Ashley knew all along. Then there's no need to hide it anymore. I stood up. "Dylan, lead me to the kitchen." I rushed to the kitchen. In the kitchen, a young apprentice chef was frantically cooking alone. Dylan handed me an apron. I quickly washed my hands and put on the apron. Looking at the ingredients laid out, I immediately started cooking. The apprentice chef followed my instructions perfectly. Watching my technique, Dylan muttered, "That's the John I know." In no time, several dishes were ready, and the staff began delivering them to the private rooms. Soon after, sounds of amazement came from the rooms. "Wow, this is delicious." "What is this? I've never tasted anything this good before." But the cooking was far from over. I kept creating new dishes, one after another. The apprentice chef was astounded by my skills. "Who exactly are you?" While moving as I instructed, the apprentice chef threw a question at me. I answered his question directly. "I used to be the head chef at a five-star hotel overseas." The apprentice chef dropped the radish he was holding. "What, really?" "Don't drop the food on the floor. Keep moving. Don't stop." "Yes, sir." Indeed, my previous job was as the head chef at an overseas five-star hotel. I started working at a five-star hotel right after high school. Initially, I was part of the wait staff, but one day, while preparing staff meals, Mike, the head chef at the time, saw potential in me as a chef. Probably because my father had taught me how to cook when I was young. After several years as an apprentice, I was appointed head chef at an overseas five-star hotel. Honestly, I was surprised to become the head chef, something I had never imagined, but seeing people moved by my cooking made me happy. However, I was worried about leaving my father alone in America since I was working overseas. To me, my father was just as important as cooking. I could continue cooking even if not at a 5-star hotel. Reluctantly, I resigned from the head chef position. I had never told Ashley about my background. It wasn't that I was hiding it, it was just hard to bring up. When I later asked how she knew about my past as a head chef, she said my father had told her. That made sense to me. While reminiscing about the past, I continued to cook relentlessly with the apprentice chef. Now only the dessert remained. Today's dessert was a chocolate mousse. I plated the already prepared mousse and started decorating it. It had been a while since I used luxurious plates for plating. It seems my skills hadn't dulled. I decorated a chocolate mousse as if it were a piece of art. Dylan and the apprentice chef watched me decorate, moved by the sight. The beautifully decorated mousse was carried by the staff to the private rooms where guests were waiting. All the dishes were successfully completed. Dylan, who had watched me cook, and the apprentice chef, who had assisted me, applauded. I showed respect to the two of them. I was exhausted from preparing a full course after such a long time. Dylan, with tears in his eyes, said, "John, you really saved us today. Thank you." I was glad to have been of help to Dylan. It was a brief moment, but I enjoyed cooking for the guests again. I was actually thankful to Dylan for giving me this valuable experience. I took off my apron and was about to return to the room where Ashley was waiting. But a staff member approached me with a worried expression. In a flurry, he said, "A guest has requested to meet the chef who prepared today's meal." Indeed, I was the one who prepared the meal today, but I'm not the official chef of this traditional hotel. It wouldn't be appropriate for someone like me to greet the guests. Then Dylan rushed over. "If you don't mind, John, could you greet the guests?" Dylan, who looked at me with pleading eyes, is one of my few friends. Thinking it would help Dylan, I decided I could at least make a greeting. I stood up. The staff member guided me to the private room where the guest had requested my presence. It was the room next to the one where Ashley and I had been. Could this room be? I had a bad feeling about this. "Excuse me." The staff member opened the door to the private room. Inside were Mason and the 5-star hotel chefs who had visited our place today. It was Mason, as I had feared. I tried not to make eye contact. Mason, not realizing it was me, began to speak. "Your cooking was marvelous. Each dish was meticulously crafted, and all were exquisite. Would you consider becoming the exclusive chef at my hotel?" I was speechless, shocked by Mason's praise. I never imagined Mason would commend my cooking like this. Dylan, listening from behind, was also surprised. I looked down, unsure of how to respond. Then, suddenly, he leaned in to get a better look at my face. "You're John." Mason was wide-eyed with astonishment. "Why are you here? Did you make those dishes?" Hesitantly, in a soft voice, I said, "Due to various circumstances, I prepared those dishes," and Mason looked at me incredulously. "No way. How could someone as incompetent as you create such delicate dishes? Stop joking around." Mason's loud voice echoed throughout the private room. Then the 5-star hotel chef sitting with Mason stared intently at my face. It seemed like he suddenly remembered something. "Aren't you John, the head chef?" The 5-star chef looked at me with shining eyes. I still vividly remember. We had met when I was still the head chef at an overseas 5-star hotel. Back then, he was an apprentice chef and assisted me. The 5-star chef, now brimming with confidence, had a different demeanor back then. That's why I always encouraged him. Mason, puzzled by the revelation, asked the 5-star hotel chef, "What's going on here?" Mason seemed to be in a state of panic. "It's understandable." He couldn't easily believe that someone he thought was just an employee turned out to be a chef. Then, the chef from the five-star hotel explained to Mason that I had once been the head chef at a five-star hotel. Mason accidentally dropped a glass he was holding. Back then, your dishes were revolutionary in their deliciousness and became quite the talk. I'm truly thrilled to have tasted those dishes today. That's impossible. Mason seemed unwilling to believe that I, whom he had looked down upon, was a top-class chef. Then, the five-star hotel chef made a surprising offer. "John, meeting here must be fate. Won't you join me in cooking at the five-star hotel's restaurant again?" Me, cooking again? It was an incredibly flattering offer. I definitely wanted to cook again. However, I worried that becoming busy again might mean neglecting Ashley and my daughter. Then, Ashley, who had been listening to my conversation from the next private room, quietly emerged. She looked at me and whispered, "John, you never know when you'll get another chance like this. It's okay to think about yourself more than me." I made up my mind. I told the chef from the five-star hotel restaurant, "I'd love to, but there's a place that needs me more. I'm sorry." The five-star hotel chef nodded in disappointment. The position of head chef at a five-star hotel restaurant could be filled by someone other than me. But I felt that only I could be the chef this traditional hotel needed. Those present were astonished by my decision. But Ashley was smiling. "Dylan, I want to protect the cuisine of this hotel. Will you let me be the head chef?" Dylan was moved to tears by my words. "You, a distinguished chef, are willing to protect my hotel, even if it's not a five-star hotel." Dylan confirmed with me several times. But my mind was made up. After a while, I firmly quit my job as a cleaner at the luxury hotel. Then, I officially started working as the head chef at Dylan's hotel. From menu development to ingredient sourcing, I spared no effort in crafting top-quality dishes. Thanks to this, the hotel's restaurant quickly became extremely popular. That's not all. The hotel was fully booked. Eventually, we even started receiving media coverage, and before we knew it, we became a five-star hotel. It was some time after I started working as a chef at this hotel. I was about to leave work as usual when I encountered Mason waiting for me. Why was Mason here? I intended to ignore him, but he approached me. "Would you consider becoming a chef at my hotel? I'll offer you good terms. With your cooking, my hotel is sure to become very popular." I was surprised to see Mason, who had always looked down on me, now turning the tables as if nothing had happened. At the same time, I knew I definitely didn't want to work at a hotel with someone like him. I cannot work for someone who belittles and underestimates others. With that, I left the scene. Mason was left standing there, dumbfounded. And just like that, a year flew by. I continued to focus on developing new menus. Now, our hotel has become so popular that reservations are booked 3 years in advance. Thanks to Dylan's consideration, I occasionally bring Ashley, my daughter, and my father to the hotel to enjoy the cuisine. I hope to continue creating delicious dishes that both my family and our guests will appreciate. Seeing my surprised face, Jason, the head of the sales department, said while trying to suppress his laughter, "Sorry, I totally forgot your existence." Everyone around us burst into laughter at his words. I dazedly stared at Jason. I was the person who planned a company trip, yet how come there was no plane ticket for me? "Sorry, but there's no seat for you. You might as well head back now." Watching Jason laughing his heart out, I regretted not taking care of the travel arrangements myself until the end. But it seemed that Jason had planned this all along. I was completely set up. On my way home from the airport, I sent an email to a certain person. They are probably on the plane with the rest of the sales department by now, so this email won't reach them immediately, but that's fine. I've been transferred a lot more than other employees. The reason is that they wanted me to have tough experiences and get to know various jobs within the company. Because of this, people including Jason started to see me as a liability that couldn't stick to any department, but it was all at the behest of a certain person. My name is Michael. I'm a company employee in my 40s. My parents divorced when I was a child, and I lived with my mother and grandmother in my mother's hometown. My mother was always busy with work, so I spent a lot of time with my grandmother when I came home from school. When I was doing my homework in the living room, my grandmother would bring me snacks and drinks. We would eat them together and chat about what happened at school that day or just have some light conversation. Among the snacks my grandmother prepared, my favorite was a certain brand of cookies. They were sweet, cinnamon, and had a satisfying crunch, and they were both our favorites. Sometimes my grandmother would buy cookies from different brands, but we always ended up saying that the usual ones were better. I loved spending the time with my grandmother. My mom was always busy with work, so she often came home late at night. But having my grandma around meant I never felt lonely, and I admired my mom for her hard work. I wanted to work hard like my mother and be kind to others like my grandmother when I grew up. And so, I grew up with those thoughts in mind. My mother really wanted me to go to college, although it wasn't easy. Consequently, I managed to graduate from a college thanks to scholarships and other programs. I was interested in business management, so I chose the subject as my major. After graduating, I got a job at the cookies manufacturer I always loved. Having an accounting certification, I was assigned to the accounting department as a new graduate. Being assigned to the accounting department as a new graduate is thought to be difficult, but it seems I was placed there because there happened to be an opening. Though I joined a company because I liked its products, I ended up in a department unrelated to them, but that's just how things turned out. I was placed in the accounting department, so I had no choice but to do my best there. Fortunately, the department was full of serious people, but my colleagues were sincere, and they made a comfortable place for me. The accounting department might have seemed stiff and gloomy from the outside, but Alex, my mentor, taught me the job carefully, and my boss, Michael, was kind. While learning the job, I even acquired a business accounting certification, but 4 years after joining, I was transferred to the product planning department. The atmosphere in the product planning department was completely different from the accounting department. It was filled with curious people, and there was always a buzz of conversation about recent societal trends and personal hobbies. I am not good at speaking. Even when I was struggling to find words, there were people who would understand what I wanted to say and draw it out from me. I was initially surprised by everyone's high communication skills. The job required creativity and analytical skills, so I became interested in the latest trends and learned about marketing tasks. Our team's proposal had finally been approved, and we were all celebrating. Then, I was transferred to the production management department. The motto of production management was to avoid stockouts without holding too much inventory. This job, which involved everything from procuring raw materials to shipping finished products, was appealing because it allowed me to be directly involved with my favorite snacks. Since this department required communication with many other departments, I was able to interact with people I had never dealt with before. It expanded my network. Just when I was starting to feel antsy about becoming a mid-level employee, possibly responsible for training juniors, I was transferred to the marketing department. I would often do market research while in the product planning department, but figuring out how to sell was the job of the marketing department. This department required management skills and the ability to see the big picture. It's been a while since I graduated from college, but I remember there was a marketing department within the business school I attended. Although it wasn't my major, I took some courses on marketing strategies. After all, management is considered a higher concept than marketing, and it's said that the goals of management and marketing are aligned. Marketing involves efforts directed towards customers, while management involves efforts considering the entire company's future. Touching on management-related subjects after such a long time, I found management studies challenging yet enjoyable. There was a great sense of accomplishment when the sales strategies I came up with increased the awareness of our products, and I wished to stay in this department where I could apply what I learned in business school. Around the time I turned 40, I was transferred to the sales department. This was my fourth time facing the challenges of adapting to a new department since joining the company. Like before, I believed that there would be new discoveries and joys in the sales department, but this time things didn't go as smoothly. On my first day in the new department, I arrived a bit earlier than usual. I always do this on the first day to greet everyone and organize my desk. When I got to the sales department, it seemed the boss hadn't arrived yet, so I asked someone nearby for my desk and started to get settled. However, even when the start time came, the boss was nowhere to be seen. I thought it was common for superiors to arrive early on the day a new person joins for introductions, but it seemed the head of this department was different. About 30 minutes after the start time, Jason, the department head, appeared with a coffee in hand. I immediately went to Jason's desk to greet him. "Good morning. My name is Michael, and I have been assigned to the sales department starting today. I look forward to working with you." Upon my greeting, Jason responded with "Oh," as if he had just remembered about me. "Nice to meet you. Michael, you came from the marketing department, right?" Jason said this while looking over the documents presumably passed to him by HR. You've been bouncing around different departments, right? What's the deal? Were you being passed around as a burden?" He said this while frowning and roughly placing the documents down. I was taken aback by being called a burden to my face on our first meeting. Indeed, I have often been transferred every 3 to 4 years. Looking around, I saw many who had been in the same department for over 5 years, and I sometimes wondered why I was the only one frequently transferred. However, I always tried to do my best in every department I was assigned to. I never saw myself as a burden to the company. "Well, whatever. Hey everyone, can I have your attention for a moment?" Jason called out to everyone in the sales department as if nothing had happened. All eyes turned to me. "This is Michael, who joined the sales department today. He came from the marketing department, but it seems like he's been shuffled around a lot and couldn't fit in anywhere, making him somewhat of a burden. Try to get along with him, but only to a certain extent." Laughter erupted at Jason's humorous introduction. And there, I realized I was completely out of my element. I was incredulous at the overtly malicious introduction and looked at Jason. He smirked at me with a nasty grin and ended the conversation with "That's the situation." I should have responded properly, but I was so shocked by the blatant hostility that I couldn't say a word. I've never been confrontational, but in all the departments I've been, people warmly welcomed me, and as we worked together, our relationships deepened gradually. First impressions are important. I should have counted Jason's words with a joke, but it was my mistake not to. They must have thought I wouldn't talk back no matter what. As expected, I became the target of Jason's harassment from that day on. The following days were gloomy. I've worked at this company for nearly 20 years, but I've never experienced anything like this. Given the laughter at Jason's remarks yesterday, it seemed best to assume there were no allies in this department. A mentor was assigned to teach me the ropes of the sales job, but perhaps because of Jason, there was a certain distance. Observing the department more closely, I noticed everyone seemed overly cautious around Jason. Although I was unfortunate to become Jason's target this time, I wondered if there were others in the department who had been targeted like me before. I casually asked Brandon, the senior mentor, "Why did the person before me leave?" Brandon hesitated with his words. "Why are you asking something like that?" "Well, I was just wondering if there was an issue with Jason." Upon hearing my words, Brandon glanced around and then whispered, "I feel bad for you, Michael, but once he's got his sights set on someone, it's over. The harassment continues until the person leaves. It seems Jason targets people like me who don't fight back and repeatedly harasses them. It might be his way of blowing off steam, but it's unbearable for those on the receiving end. So, my predecessor left because of that. Jason is watching." Brandon didn't say more, but his words were enough for me to understand what was happening in this department. Jason was originally the ace of the sales department and climbed up to the position of manager at a young age. However, being good at the job doesn't necessarily make someone a good boss. It seems the more overbearing Jason became, the more power he got. If you upset him, he'd lash out or relentlessly corner someone. He would push those he disliked to resign and favor those who flattered him, regardless of their abilities. This blurring of professional and personal boundaries seemed excessive, but it had been tolerated in this department. Now, he surrounded himself with favorite employees who obey him, effectively controlling the sales department. While avoiding Jason's gaze, I gathered information from Brandon. It appears I've become the target of a troublesome person. Just as I was getting used to the work in the sales department and the daily nagging from Jason. It seems that every year around this time, the sales department goes on a recreational trip. Some departments I had been in before had such events, and others didn't. It was my first company event in a while. One day, Jason suddenly called me over and tasked me with arranging the trip. "I really want to go to New York. Considering it's from here to New York, it might be quite expensive. Is that okay?" "That's your responsibility." Jason handed me a document with the schedule and budget. Even though he told me to figure it out, there's a limit to what can be done. If we wanted decent accommodations and meals, it might be difficult with this budget. "Understood. I'll give it a try." So, I scoured the internet for cost-effective accommodations and considered travel agency tours, somehow managing to come up with a New York trip plan within the budget. Juggling sales work and travel arrangements, I stayed late every day working on the trip plans. Since everyone's available dates were already set, I had to rush the hotel bookings. Popular cost-effective hotels needed to be booked quickly to avoid missing out on available rooms. When I submitted the plan and estimate to Jason, he just said them and carelessly placed it on a pile of documents. I was concerned that the hotel booking might fall through if it was left. I hesitantly spoke up to Jason. "What is it?" "The hotel is popular, and there's a chance it might get fully booked if we don't reserve soon." "What? Are you telling me to hurry up? Who do you think you are?" Jason glared at me, furrowing his brow. "I'm sorry, if an old-inn or a lower-grade hotel is okay, then there's no rush. Sorry to bother you when you're busy." As I was about to leave, Jason stopped me. "Wait a minute," and I felt a sense of relief inside. "So, I just need to contact here to make the reservation?" Yes. They should recognize the name since we've already got a quote. It includes the flight tickets as well." I'll take care of the rest. You don't have to do anything more." I was surprised by Jason's unexpected offer. "Really? You're going to handle it, Jason? Is there a problem?" "No, not at all. Thank you very much." I was puzzled but left the rest of the arrangements in Jason's hands and returned to my desk. However, I would come to regret letting Jason take over from it. On the day of the recreational trip, when I arrived at the meeting place, I saw Jason busy with his phone. He seemed to be sending a check and barcode to each member of the sales department one by one. Lately, checking in with a two-dimensional barcode instead of a paper ticket has become the norm. I moved forward to receive my ticket from Jason. "All right, everyone, let's head to the boarding gate." Jason said this as if he couldn't see me standing right in front of him, addressing everyone else. I hadn't received a barcode yet. What? I should have sent it to everyone already. Jason made an exaggerated expression. What? Seeing my surprised face, Jason said while trying to hold back his laughter. "Sorry, I totally forgot you were here." At Jason's words, everyone around us burst into laughter. I just stood there dazedly, looking at Jason. "Sorry, but there's no seat for you. You had better head back now." Seeing Jason laughing, I regretted not handling the arrangements myself until the end. But it seems Jason had planned this from the start. I was completely set up. Understood. When I said that, Jason said bye and left with everyone towards the boarding gate. I stood there, watching their backs as they left, holding my travel bag and standing still for a while. On my way home from the airport, I sent an email to a certain person. That person is probably on the plane with the rest of the sales department by now, so the email won't reach them immediately, but that's fine. I never imagined I would be treated like this at a company I've worked at for nearly 20 years. Maybe I was too complacent, thinking I could handle this transfer as I had others in the past. In fact, my next transfer had been already decided. Though I had just arrived in the sales department, I was supposed to go to the strategic planning department after spending a few years here. I've been transferred far more than other employees. This was because they wanted me to gain tough experiences and learn about various jobs within the company. As a result, people, including Jason, saw me as a burden that couldn't be attached to any department, but it was all at the directive of a certain person. That person was Chairman Johnson, the company's founder. To be precise, he is currently the CEO and chairman, planning to hand over the CEO position to a subordinate soon. After a while, I received a call from Chairman Johnson, who seemed to have arrived at the destination. It was known that Chairman Johnson would accompany the sales department on the trip. Chairman Johnson and I were supposed to take different flights due to the different classes of seats and meet up at the destination. Chairman Johnson was surprised I wasn't there and called me directly. "What are you doing?" Despite being on the phone, I deeply apologized, hearing Chairman Johnson's disappointed voice. "I'm so sorry, Chairman Johnson. I never expected something like this to happen to me." Then, Chairman Johnson told me what had happened at the meeting place. Jason, who was in a good mood after setting me up, cheerfully greeted Chairman Johnson. When Chairman Johnson noticed I was missing, he said, "It seems the future president is not here." What? Jason was taken aback by his words. "Where's Michael? I heard he was the one planning this trip." I was the one who sent the email detailing the schedule for the recreational trip. However, after that, the responsibility was shifted from me to Jason. "I'm sorry, Chairman Johnson. Unfortunately, it seems Michael forgot to secure his own ticket and isn't here," Jason said to Chairman Johnson with a wry smile. "Michael, I can't believe he would make such a mistake." Seeing Chairman Johnson's puzzled face, Jason nervously asked, "I might have misheard, but what did you say a while ago? Something about a successor?" "I said he's the successor president," Chairman Johnson stated firmly, and Jason asked again, "President? Whom are you referring to?" After being asked repeatedly, Chairman Johnson said with a bit of irritation, "I told you, Michael is the successor president. I've decided that. Do you have a problem with that?" It's no wonder Jason was taken aback by those words. I was just as shocked when I first heard it. My encounter with Chairman Johnson dates back almost 20 years. At the time when he wasn't yet serving as chairman and was known as President Johnson. A year had passed since I was assigned to the accounting department as a new graduate, and I was finally getting comfortable with the daily tasks. Accounting tasks are highly specialized, making it difficult to grasp the whole picture, including the financial statements. You could manage your work without understanding how your tasks fit into the financial statements, as long as you knew what you were responsible for. At that time, I understood my tasks but didn't really know what everyone else was doing. During lunch, I was eating my boxed lunch at my desk, summarizing tasks and their owners in a notebook, and studying the financial statements. Though not asked by Brandon, I wanted to learn as much as possible about the department's work to get a better understanding of the overall picture. When everyone else went out for lunch, I was invited. However, I had already bought my lunch. I was alone in the office. To save energy, only a few lights were on during lunch, leaving the office dim as I scrutinized the financial statements. I looked up for a moment and thought I made eye contact with someone walking in the hallway. Though the face was unclear from my desk, I greeted them since they were a colleague. Surprisingly, the person entered the accounting office. The smiling man seemed familiar. Working hard even during lunch, I see. Thank you, just trying to learn as much as I can. I replied, a bit embarrassed, not sure who he was. You're the new guy, right? Settling in okay. Does he know about me? The man said so. Yes, I've managed to get the hang of my tasks, but understanding the whole picture is still challenging. Interesting. Did someone ask you to do this? He pondered for a moment after asking. No, no one asked, but I thought it'd be good to understand more than just my tasks, to eventually grasp the current situation and think about improvements. You're interested in fund management, aren't you? That's impressive. I didn't even understand the difference between financial statements and balance sheets when I started learning about management. He was surprised by my response. I shouldn't have said such things as a newcomer, but I was surprised he took me seriously. Were you aiming for the accounting department from the start? Not really. I graduated from the business school, but I joined because I liked our products, not specifically for accounting. Since I was in the business school, dealing with numbers was never a challenge for me. However, having joined my favorite confectionery manufacturer, I also have a desire to not just work with numbers but to be directly involved with the products one day. So, you're interested in planning or manufacturing too? Absolutely. I'm in accounting now, so I'm focusing here, but working directly with the products has always been my dream. I see. Maybe in about 3 years then. What? The man murmured something to himself, prompting me to ask again. Sorry, it's nothing. So, do you have any goals you're aiming for in the accounting department right now? Well, for now, I want to expand my knowledge of financial statements. I think I need to understand the processes that the accounting system automates. While accounting systems save time, I believe it's not good to rely on them entirely. Using an accounting system makes it easier to handle data and understand the flow of information, but getting a full grasp of the big picture is crucial for management accounting, which is beneficial for business management. Yes, I'd also like to try my hand at cost accounting. That's great. Product costing is vital for a business's lifeline. It's good to have that experience. As we were talking, the bell signaling on the end of lunch break rang. People began returning to the office, and while they seemed surprised to see the man, they greeted him as they passed. See you around. With that, the man left with a smile. Then, Alex from the next desk asked me, "What were you talking to President Johnson about?" What? Surprised, I inadvertently raised my voice. It seemed that the familiar face I couldn't remember was from the company's website or brochures. I knew from our conversation that he was someone in a management position, but I never imagined he was President Johnson. Although we only talked about work that day, from then on, Chairman Johnson often visited the accounting department. Sometimes he spoke with Brandon, but he always made a point to stop by my desk afterward. We talked about my current work, the company at large, and even personal matters like family. After I knew it was Chairman Johnson, I was a bit more guarded in our conversations, but he told me, "We're going to be working together for a long time, so don't be so stiff." Even after I transferred from the accounting department to product planning and then to production management, I frequently crossed paths with Chairman Johnson. I always thought Chairman Johnson was just making rounds to listen to the employees in various departments, but a colleague in product planning mentioned that they started seeing him around more often after I arrived. Chairman Johnson, who used to be spotted only once or twice a year, was now a more common sight. This was mentioned not only in product planning but also after I moved to production management. I always found it strange, but I thought it was just a coincidence. However, I enjoyed talking with Chairman Johnson. If he was making an effort to see me, I was happy about it. Chairman Johnson once asked me, "What do you think is a necessary quality for a president?" "Maybe the ability to oversee the entire company and the world at large." I answered thoughtfully, "True, being able to have an overview is important, but you've been saying that since your first year, wanting to understand the entirety of the accounting department." "Oh, maybe I do have the makings of a president, just kidding." I joked, and Chairman Johnson laughed along, continuing the conversation. Knowledge in accounting or culture, specific skills needed for job execution can be learned later, but innate qualities are something you're born with. It's not easy to change the way you think, right? Indeed, some people are naturally positive, while others can't help but think negatively no matter how hard they try. Even when I make mistakes at work, I tend to bounce back relatively quickly instead of dwelling on them. The transfers that come every few years might leave some regrets, but the joy of learning new things outweighs them. I hadn't fully realized it. I have a naturally strong curiosity. Exactly. Not everyone is cut out for the job of president. I'm not really the best fit for it myself. I was more interested in research. Really? Before founding this company, you were doing food development research at a major confectionery manufacturer, right? Yes, exactly. So when I decided to start my own business, I realized I wasn't quite cut out for it, but I had to do it anyway. Building this company, which is well known and loved by many, must have required immense effort. Being a president requires various skills like dealing with crises, decision-making, and execution. Chairman Johnson might say he's not suited for the role, but reaching this point must have involved significant talent and hard work. What I think is, a president should never stop learning. Even if things are going well, they shouldn't be satisfied and should always look for improvements. That's the kind of person I want for the next president. Are you planning to retire, Chairman Johnson? Surprised by the talk of a successor, I asked Chairman Johnson. Not immediately, but succession is a common topic among presidents. Who will take over? You can't just hand over the company to someone who knows nothing, right? A successor needs to be properly groomed. The future of the company is at stake, so it can't be taken lightly. Right, that's why I've been worried. But then, I happened to meet someone who seemed suitable. But the next CEO. Chairman Johnson said this with a very pleased expression. That's great. By any chance, Mr. Johnson, were you visiting various departments to find a successor? Did I do something like that? From his puzzled look, it was clear that my assumption was wrong. Well, let's set that aside for now. What I was looking for was someone serious, curious, and always eager to learn. Someone who could adapt flexibly to new environments and communicate effectively, no matter where they are. Chairman Johnson listed the qualities he was looking for in a president. I pictured the faces of various people within the company. I wondered who exactly he was talking about. My judgment wasn't wrong after all. Chairman Johnson said, looking me straight in the eye. "It's you, Michael." Huh? I was stunned. I stood with my mouth agape, and Chairman Johnson smiled contentedly. "I would like you to be my successor." I was at a loss for words, and Chairman Johnson continued in a gentle tone. "Didn't you ever think it was strange that you were transferred every 3 or 4 years? Well, yes, but I thought maybe it just happened. That was because I wanted you to experience various departments and understand their specific work. Understanding the field is important for a president. I had come to think my frequent transfers as normal, but others might stay in the same department for 5 or 10 years. I never imagined such a reason behind my many transfers. Could it be that Mr. Johnson often came to see me because? Of course, I was concerned about how my successor was doing." Saying that, Chairman Johnson puffed out his chest. It felt like solving a long-standing mystery. "Wait, when did you start thinking of me that way?" At my question, Chairman Johnson looked nostalgic. "When I talked to the newcomer in the accounting department. I remember that time well. When I talked without even realizing he was the president. It was during my first year, on a lunch break in the accounting department. I had no idea that such a casual conversation would lead him to choose me as his successor. Wherever I was transferred, President Johnson would always visit and ask, 'How's it going here?' Having no memory of my father, I sometimes wondered if a father would watch over me like this. If Chairman Johnson chose me as his successor, there was no reason to refuse. Of course, I had my fears. The thought of possibly ruining the company Chairman Johnson built from scratch with just one wrong decision was terrifying. You don't have to rush. After gaining some more experience in other departments, you'll go to the strategic planning office to learn about management. Once you get there." Chairman Johnson, always calm, seemed happier than I had ever seen him. "I'm counting on you." This conversation happened before I came to the sales department. I was still in the marketing department at that time. Since then, Chairman Johnson became the CEO and chairman, and it was rumored within the company that he might hand over the presidency to a successor in a few years. I was transferred to the sales department and would go to the strategic planning office in a few years. I heard that Chairman Johnson had mentioned this during the trip. Jason was reportedly trembling with his face pale throughout the trip. The story distracted him during the trip, so he seemed not to even notice the beautiful scenery of New York, according to Chairman Johnson. The day after everyone returned from the trip, Jason and I were called in by Chairman Johnson. Though Chairman Johnson was surprised at my absence, he didn't delve too deeply into it during the trip. I couldn't give details over the phone, but I felt Chairman Johnson had a sense of what was going on from Jason's behavior. Not being strictly questioned during the trip seemed to have put Jason in a state of limbo, which was effective in its own way. He came to work the next day looking haggard. "So, first of all, I've mentioned that Michael will be the next president, but do you have any questions about that?" Why him, I mean?" Jason hesitantly started speaking. "Because he has the qualities needed. Haven't you noticed that as Michael's supervisor?" There was a sharp edge to the words directed at Jason. "I'm sorry, but the issue with the ticket was his mistake." "Are you still talking about that?" Chairman Johnson raised his voice, causing Jason to shrink back. "Michael, if you have something to say, feel free." That made me speak up. I was the one who got the quote for the trip, but Jason insisted on handling the arrangements himself. On the day, I was told at the airport that there was no ticket for me. Telling the truth, I felt a sharp glare from Jason beside me. "That's nonsense. I don't care if you're going to be president or whatever. You won't bring me down." Jason lashed out at me. Feeling somewhat exasperated, I turned to face Jason. Jason, isn't it about time you stopped? I'm aware of all the harassment you've inflicted on many people. It was clear from what colleagues had said that Jason hadn't just harassed me, but had been doing it to various people over time. There must be many who couldn't stand up to him and left. No one in the department dared to speak up against Jason because they were desperate to avoid trouble themselves. They turned a blind eye to those being harassed. Of course, such behavior is inexcusable, but the priority was to address the root of the problem. What are you talking about? Do you have any proof? There's no way you have any. Then, I placed a document in front of Jason. While everyone was on the trip, I contacted someone who used to work in the sales department. They had left, but they had kept a detailed diary. Jason began to tremble as he looked at the document. It contained detailed accounts of what Jason had said and done. When I looked into it, I found many others who had left. As soon as I mentioned Jason's name, they all were willing to help. I had gotten the contact information of these former employees from Brandon, who had taught me a lot about the job. He must have known he'd be in trouble if Jason found out, but he trusted me and shared the information. This can't be proof. I thought the diary might not be enough, so I asked the person in charge of the consultation service to dig up old emails. Here they are. As I handed over another document, Jason snatched it from my hand and roughly flipped through the pages. His hands shook, and he collapsed to his knees. This can't be. Chairman Johnson took the documents from Jason's hands and flipped through them. So, this is what you had been doing during the trip? Yes, since I didn't have a ticket. I shrugged and explained to Chairman Johnson. The strength to overcome adversity is also a quality of a president. Chairman Johnson smiled in satisfaction. Still, I bear some responsibility for not noticing the misconduct of my subordinate. I'm sorry for putting you through that. Chairman Johnson apologized to me. Please, don't say that, Chairman Johnson. Being able to apologize properly is also important for a president. He winked. After everything came to light, Jason was demoted and transferred to a different department. He was sent to a so-called sideline department and seems to be spending his days in gloom. To ensure he couldn't behave recklessly anymore, the person in charge of the company's grievance office keeps a close eye on him. After Jason left the sales department, my colleagues came to me one by one to apologize. They must have known their actions were wrong in their mind. I accepted the apologies, and fulfilling days in the sales department finally began. When I returned home after a long time, my grandmother and mother welcomed me. My mother is still energetic, but my grandmother is quite old now, so she tends to forget recent events quickly, though she surprisingly remembers things from the past well. Grandma, do you remember this? I handed her a familiar bag of rice crackers. Oh, it's my favorite, isn't it? That's right. Do you remember that I work at this company? Yes, of course. Mikey also loved these. I was so happy when I heard you got a job here. Though my grandmother has more absent-minded moments lately, her responses are still sharp. I've become the president of the company. My words surprised my grandmother. That must have been hard. Yes, it wasn't easy, but it was enjoyable. Despite the challenges, now that I'm president, I feel that everything has been a valuable experience. I still have a lot to learn as a president, but I'm doing my best in my own way, guided by Chairman Johnson. That's good. Mikey has always been such a hard worker, hasn't he? Being praised like a little child at my age makes me feel a bit shy. It's all thanks to you, Grandma. Thank you. As I expressed my gratitude, my grandmother smiled happily, with her eyes narrowed. The nostalgic smile of my grandmother I used to see while eating cookies as a child. These cookies and my grandmother's smile are my fundamental memories. Just thinking about them warms my heart. I hope to convey this warmth to many people through our products. I'm willing to do whatever it takes for that. The journey as a president has just begun.